What's going on, everyone? Welcome to another edition of Back Your Play with Q. As always, I'm your host, Rich Quinones. We are powered by Fresh Roasted Coffee. Check the show notes below on the YouTube channel, Rich Q on Q, BYP20. That's your promo code, 20% off your first purchase of Fresh Roasted Coffee, the official coffee of Back Your Play. As you also can catch us on 1029 FM The Game, Coastal Sports Network with The Drive with Q. As we welcome in Lloyd Vance, our NFL Insider host. Lloyd Vance's Insider Football on 1029 FM. The Game, Mondays, 8 o'clock to 9. Lloyd does a fantastic job. Give him a follow on X as well, at Lloyd Vance. 7 weeks of the NFL season, mercifully for some, already in the books. A double dip last night. We got to get into Monday Night Football. A crazy game between the Baltimore Ravens and the Tampa Bay Bucks. And the Ravens were up big. You went to bed, you woke up, you realized Tampa Bay made it respectful, if you will. The score wasn't really indicative of the contest, 41-31. But what came out of that, Lamar Jackson, my friend, 5 touchdown tosses. Obviously, the front runner as far as the NFL MVP, but also the fact Tampa Bay loses Mike Evans. They lose Godwin, which we will get into for a moment. But as always, appreciate a couple moments of your time and your takeaways last night with the Baltimore Ravens.
Yeah, they're a complete team, Q. It's their fifth straight victory. They started 0-2. And what you're starting to see is they're a complete team. They can beat you a variety of ways. Everybody always talks about Lamar Jackson's
Mm-hmm.
just a dynamic runner, but he is passing the football like we have not seen throughout his career. And he's a two-time MVP, and he's getting the ball out of his hands very quickly. Bateman's starting to show up in the receiving game, particularly Mark Andrews. They got him involved as well. He looked very good, particularly in the red zone. And then it was like, oh, look what we found in the second half. They said, all right, we're going to turn Derrick Henry loose on you. And he breaks off an 80-yard run, almost takes it to the house. And they're just a dynamic team. Their offensive line with Linderbaum and Ronnie Stanley's playing very well. And that defense has been kind of maligned this year. They're letting up a lot of points, but they're very timely in terms of Oweh and Hamilton, and particularly, Van Noy is playing at a defensive player of the year level. He's one of the sack leaders in the AFC. So good win for them. I kind of thought they took their foot off the gas late in the game. They kind of let Baker get some garbage
Yeah.
time stats, but it could have been worse. But they covered, and they're a dangerous team right now.
Yeah, I mean, like I mentioned the other day, I liked them with the points laying 4.5. And to your point, Baker put up some big time numbers of close to 400 yards. Derrick Henry, he's got well over 800 yards in 7 games. I mean, he rushed for 2,000 a couple years ago. He's having a career year at 30 something years of age. It's just remarkable. But then on the flip side of that, Tampa Bay comes back down to earth. Defensively, they had a lot of miscues. I mean, early on, they were getting a little bit to Lamar Jackson, and then the game just opened up. But I guess, the conversation today is you lose Mike Evans, and then boom, Baker had that bad red zone pick. So that's the bad Baker, had a couple in that game. And then Godwin late, down 10, went under a minute or so, a minute and a half to go. The questions are to Todd Bowles, why was he out there? Out for the season now with a really, really bad uh, injury. And look, you're trying to win the game, and I understand that. It's always that fine line when you're like, okay, why is a player still out there? And you dislocate your left ankle, he's pretty much done for the year. That is a major, major blow. And now you got Mike Evans, who's banged up as well with the hamstring injury. That can be tricky. Any issues with Todd Bowles leaving Godwin in this game when pretty much the game was over?
I have no issues with it. And the thing is, Q, these guys want to play. They want to play 60 minutes. They want their opportunities. And it is unfortunate that he got hurt at that time in the game. And that could have happened earlier in the game. So, they were down, as you said, Mike Evans, and the other receivers they're just not carrying the load. So they had him out there trying to put up some stats. I can see it both ways. And it was just unfortunate, very gruesome injury. And they kind of turned away from it with the cameras. And hopefully Godwin comes back from that. But as you're saying, he's going to probably be out for the rest of the season. And then you have Mike Evans. You never know with these hamstring injuries when he's going to be able to come back. So um, they're going to have to probably bring in a receiver. But they're in the mix. They're tied for the division lead in the NFC South. And we had said it was always going to be a pretty tight division at the
Yeah.
top. They're fighting the Saints. Um, Big game coming up with them in Atlanta, who's the co-leader Not the Saints are kind of downtrodden as well, and the Carolina Panthers. So big game coming up this week against Atlanta, and they got to get healthy quick.
Yeah, it's always those tackles from behind, right? I mean, that's what transpired last night. Roquan Swift, the Ravens defender, and then you roll up on that ankle. It's a bad loss, no pun intended. Tampa Bay comes back down to earth. Baltimore's rolling. Ugly game. Chargers and Arizona. Arizona needed to win. We know what Murray does. I looked at some of our picks, right? Went the opposite way, Green Bay, the Texans, opposite way, Detroit, Minnesota. We both thought Washington was going to win. You called the route, and then the Bills covered against the Titans. We'll get to the Eagles and the Giants in a moment, but I thought the most impressive win, believe it or not, of the weekend. I know Washington took on a bad Carolina team and they lose Jaden Daniels, banged up, rib injury week to week. Mariota comes in. They routed Carolina. And don't look now, Washington's 5-2. I mean, so they're putting up a boatload of points. Now they're going to be tested going forward if Daniels is going to be out, but I still believe that Quinn's done an outstanding job. Head coach of the year candidate. One of my early surprises. I picked them to win the NFC East. Um, but then I also thought one of the biggest wins, believe it or not, was Cincinnati over Cleveland because now Cincinnati's starting to get a little momentum. They beat up on the Browns. The big story to come out of that game is the loss of Deshaun Watson, who's going to be out for the season with a ACL injury, non-contact, never a good thing. I'm not a fan of the crowd cheering. I'm not a fan of Deshaun Watson, but it's just man, it can't get any worse for Cleveland right now. And if you're Cincinnati, you got another win and you're starting to get some momentum.
First on Washington, they're tremendous. They're hitting on all cylinders. As you said, Dan Quinn doing a great job. I'm hearing that Jaden Daniels is going to be okay. The rib injury is not as much as expected, but Mariota came in there and like short spurts, he's a good quarterback, and they put
Right.
up a ton of yards. And that's what you got to do against a bad team. You blow them out, you got them out of there. Carolina, one of the worst teams in the league. And then in that same ilk, you got to put Cleveland in there. Cleveland is just a very bad team. They have playmakers defensively in Ward and Miles Garrett. But other than that, they just don't have much.
No.
Quarterback position is going to be in flux. DTR came in, he hurt his hand, and then they had Jameis Winston come in. But obviously, it is a bad look when your home crowd is cheering slash booing Deshaun Watson as he's leaving the field. And yes, all of us know the issues around him, and he's been underperforming. And this may be the last we see of him in a Browns uniform. They still owe him 2 years on his contract, $46 million per year. We'll see if they're able to get out of that or what they're going to do, but that money's guaranteed. So, but they got to turn the page. Very bad team. They'd be smart to kind of blow that thing up. Barry's still there, the GM, Stefanski, and it's the owner, Haslam, that wanted
Yep.
Watson out there, and he gets hurt, and you hate to say it's for the betterment of the team, but I think they're going to get some continuity. You saw it last year. They rallied around Joe Flacco, and obviously they're not going to make the playoffs this year with their record being as bad as is. But I think the team will probably play better, and they got shoved back in this one.
So, yeah, and think about it too, right? You got Kansas City would love another wide receiver. You look at Tampa Bay, maybe there's talk now Cooper Kupp could be on the block. We don't know what the Rams are going to do with Stafford. A lot of dead money. I don't think he's going to get moved. They're really not going anywhere. Green Bay got the big win late over the Texans 24-22. And then the game that you and I differed on, Detroit and Minnesota, man, it was right there for Minnesota, right? I mean, Darnold had a couple moments, and that was a back and forth kind of game. Campbell going for it on his 2025, but Jared Goff's numbers are ridiculous. Like the stats are off the charts. I mean, absolutely off the charts. And, as we're doing the show, my guy, the prop, just text me. Now everyone on the Goff MVP train, odds down to 8-1, some places at plus 850. It's like reclamation projects, right? Mayfield, Darnold, Jared Goff. Remember years ago, Jeff Fisher wanted nothing to do with Jared Goff. All of a sudden, you get him in the right place. He has an opportunity. Now, all of a sudden, he's shining with Dan Campbell in Detroit, playing some of the best football of his career. I think right now, he's the best quarterback in the NFL. I don't want to have the reaction like Lamar Jackson because what Lamar Jackson did on Monday night was fantastic. But right now, Jared Goff, I mean, this guy, 78 completion percentage. He's not missing anyone. He's throwing touchdowns left and right. The numbers are staggering.
Yeah, and I hate to toot my own horn, but that was my preseason pick as MVP, and
Yes,
and
it
a
was.
lot of people were like, "Ah, come on," and He is so efficient. 22 with 25, 280 yards, two TDs, no interceptions, and that's the key, Q. Between him and Josh Allen, who's also a guy who's fighting for the MVP spot, 15 total touchdowns, no interceptions. They're protecting the football and they're willing their team to victory. And the thing is, you saw with the Lions in this road win, they can play just like the Ravens. They can run the football down your throat. They got that two-headed monster, Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs. They both were over 100 yards. And then you have Goff, who's just so efficient. Ross St. Brown had a great game, 8 catches, 112 yards, a TD, and they just kept moving the chains and putting up points. So it was a fun game to watch. And their rookie kicker makes the big kick, Bates, and the team was celebrating. They showed it in the locker room. But this is a very competitive division. Let's not forget the Bears are in the basement at 4-2. So
Right.
the NFC North, this is going to be fun to see how this finishes up. But the Lions are exciting.
How do you explain this, right? If you go back to the loss against Tampa where he slung it 55 times, 18 and 23 in a win against Arizona for 200 yards, two touchdowns, and a pick. 18 of 18 for 292 in a win against Seattle, two touchdowns, no picks. 18 of 25 over 300 yards, three touchdowns, in a 47-9 win over Dallas, no picks. And then, as you alluded to, 22 of 25, 280, two touchdowns. His quarterback ratings off the chart. Like, did we miss something a couple years ago here with Jared Goff? Did we write him
No,
off? Did everyone write him off too soon?
I think a lot of people did. And when he got that contract and the money with Detroit, they're like, maybe they're making a mistake. But everybody always has to remember he was a number one overall pick coming out of
Yep.
college. He had all the tools and everybody was excited about him. And then he just didn't click with Jeff Fisher. Obviously, McVay gave him his opportunity, lost in the Super Bowl. And a lot of people remember, it was a low scoring
Yep.
game. Didn't play that well against the New England Patriots. But it, this Lions team is believing. Let's not forget they have Johnson back as the offensive coordinator, continuity with him. And then we talked about all the weapons around him. And let's not forget about that offensive line with Penei Sewell and all the guys. They're one of the best in the National Football League. So a lot of pieces there. Lions are looking very good. A team that I picked to win the NFC and compete against the KC Chiefs in the Super Bowl. And we'll see if they keep this rolling. But, Dan Campbell's hitting on all notes right now. And you have to put him in that conversation as coach of the year as well.
Yeah, thanks for reminding me about that Super Bowl and the under when I played the over, but let bygones be bygones. Two New York teams. All right, here we go. So the Giants just didn't show up. And what did I say last week? They were going to lose by at least 17. We knew, and I think I said, quote, I don't care if Saquon goes for a buck 67 and two touchdowns, whatever the hell I said. But here's the bottom line. Daniel Jones can no longer be the starting quarterback in the New York Giants in New York. He just can't. But they're not going to bench him. They're going to keep riding it out. When they get to 2-8, he will get benched because they'll put him in bubble wrap. So he has another game or two. Pittsburgh coming up on Monday night. Pittsburgh whacks the Jets. We'll get to that as well. But when you have lack of effort and shoddy tackling and misassignments, and you can't even throw the ball down the field, you can't even pass for touchdowns at home, you can't even move the ball. It just, I don't get it. Like I feel as though they need to just start over. I really do. You lose Andrew Thomas. You can't run the football. You weren't going to sign Saquon. And I know Belichick basically came out and said, look, man, quarterback really can't play. You got rid of your best player, and the offensive line is still so-so. Well, leading up to that game against the Eagles, I thought at least be competitive. And for maybe a quarter, it was competitive. And then obviously, what does Saquon do? Rips off a couple big ones, and then boom, you add insult to injury, gets in the end zone. You got the fourth down play, which, oh, by the way, they ran the same friggin' play the Eagles did against Cleveland. And the Giants were ill prepared for it on 4th and 3. You got Sirianni going for it because that's what he does. And then you have Brian Dable, who doesn't go for it on 4th and 3 on the Eagle side of the 50. And then on a 3rd and 13, late in the second quarter, going into halftime, he elects to what? Take the ball out of Daniel Jones's hands in the red zone and kick a field goal? I'm just over this nonsense. So you know where I stand with Daniel Jones. He can't play anymore in New York. He can't be the starter, but he will for another couple weeks. But the tenure of Daniel Jones is done. It's not. We'll talk more about the Eagles later on the drive this week. But my issue is that, again, you look at these draft picks, you look at what they invested in, and I just don't understand how they can be such a piss poor franchise. I don't understand how you can be that bad at home. It makes no sense.
And it's interesting because on my show, I was joking. I was like, oh, everybody in New York should watch the Yankees and the Dodgers in the World Series, get excited about that because their football teams are in total disarray. And the Giants, as you talked about it, their offensive line wasn't blocking anybody. Everybody's going to say that's an excuse. 8 sacks. The Eagles only allowed 119 total yards in this one. And you talked about this as a get right game for them. I thought it'd be a closer divisional battle, but it was a game where the Eagles kind of got right. And Daniel Jones, as you said, he's just so tentative in the pocket. He's just not making plays, particularly at home, which is crazy. I think he plays worse in MetLife
I
Stadium than he
agree,
does
100%.
on the road. 14 to 21, 99 yards, and he was getting harassed and he's regressed. And then they took him out in the end, like kind of like a mercy kill, put Drew Lock in at the end of this game when it was out of hand. And you know, they have a lot of work to do. Everybody talking about Gettleman and all the mistakes he made, and Joe Shane, his track record's not looking very good, and yeah, we all know. Okay, he let Saquon go. That's a big thing, but his draft picks have just not worked out. Malik Neighbors obviously coming back from the concussion. You hoped he got a little bit more from him, but the quarterback on his arrest, they just couldn't get the ball to him. So bad loss for the Giants, and I kind of agree with you. They're only going to get better if they blow this thing up, and it's going to be a long season for them in the NFC East basement.
I told you this is why they're going to win 4 or 5 games. I mean, they're not a good football team, and I'm telling you, they will rue the day that they forced Tom Coughlin out. And they wanted to keep Eli around and try to stretch out another year or two. I mean, hell, you should have gave him this offensive line 7, 8 years ago, and they didn't do that. So they're going nowhere. And then conversely, you got the New York Jets, and again, that's a bad loss. We got on Mike Tomlin. We said, what the hell is he doing? Well, they let Russ cook a little bit and marinate. He played well. I didn't like the Jets in that spot. I just think there's too many issues. You call out Williams, you fire the head coach, call out Williams, you bring in Devontae Adams. He doesn't do anything in that game. Wilson has a bad drop that leads into an interception, and the Jets get absolutely waxed by the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Jets are in the same friggin' boat as the New York Giants. They're not going anywhere. I think the Jets put all their eggs in one basket thinking Aaron Rodgers was going to be the Aaron Rodgers of 2011. This is not him.
And I always joke, you and I were talking last week. He's the assistant GM of this team. Well, yeah, he's brought in all his crony players, and now he's even got Devontae Adams there and Alan Lazard, but it's just not working there. And you can say the offensive line's a little older with Teron Smith and a lot of other retread type of guys on offensive line, but he's just not making plays. 24 of 39, 276, 2 interceptions, and only one TD. Not moving well, obviously coming off that Achilles, but he's almost 41 years old. And what Tom Brady did at that age is an aberration. And he's losing his fastball. He's that old pitcher, you know, Joe Negro or whoever you want to talk about, an old guy who just can't throw strikes anymore. And that's what it's coming to. And the Steelers defense got after him. This game was close. And you thought, okay, maybe the Jets had an opportunity. They had to lead at one point. And
Right.
then you had what, uh, 24 unanswered points. The next thing you know, it's 37-15, and the Steelers went in a laugher. So, I just don't see much of it changing for the Jets. They have a tough uh, schedule coming up, and everybody seems to want to get up to kind of beat up on Aaron Rodgers and say, okay, his time's done. And it's looking more like that way. Salah's already been filed over trending in that direction as well. And this is another situation where they're probably going to have to blow it up and go from there. Even their defense, who played so well, their offense has put them in so many bad
Right.
spots. This defense is getting beat over and over again. So tough times in New York and their football teams.
This edition of BYP presented by Fresh Roasted Coffee. As the weather cools down, you too can cool down with a fresh cold brew, iced tea, or iced coffee from our friends over at Fresh Roasted Coffee. Or if you need something hot, they got you covered as well. You can check them out, freshroastedcoffee.com. Promo code BYP. 20 is we're recapping week 7 already in the NFL. Talk about a team that's banged up, and I don't know what the hell's going on, but can we maybe put under fire the San Francisco 49ers? Ayuk gone, Debo banged up. You know, your best receiver was just shot in the chest a couple weeks ago. Kittle banged up, Purdy throwing interceptions. Is this cause for alarm right now? Now, look, you lost to Kansas City. It happens, man, but on a panic mode, 10 being the highest, if you're a 49ers fan, where's your level of panic right now, 1 to 10?
Yeah, there's a lot of panic because they're a mass unit. We talked about that Super Bowl loss hangover for this team, and it started early with Christian McCaffrey. He doesn't seem like he's coming back from that calf/Achilles injury, and now you have Ayuk going out with the ACL. Debo Samuel has pneumonia,
Yep.
and next thing you know, yeah, you're counting on Pearsall, who just got shot, and he's coming back, and good for that young man. He went out there and made some plays, and
Yeah, no doubt.
but this was an ugly game. For a Super Bowl rematch, I thought it would be better. The Chiefs win 28-18, but both quarterbacks just were not playing very well. And it was particularly Kareem Hunt who saved the day for the Chiefs, 22 rushes, 78 yards, 2 TDs. And Purdy, as you said, he's a good quarterback. He's a guy that can ride in the car, but I don't know if he can carry a team. He had 3 interceptions in his game. Uh, Arm strength's not the best, and he's got to have his guys run perfect routes for him. And the Chiefs right now are just showing championship DNA, particularly on defense. Call after latest, getting after people, Chris Jones, and Spags is doing a great job. So good win for the Chiefs, but yeah, it may be panic mode time for the Niners.
BYP right here with Q. Rich Quinones, Lloyd Vance, kind enough to join us, powered by our good friends over at Play It Again Sports. Kansas City moves to 6-0. Baltimore's 5-1. They've ripped off 5 straight. They thrashed Tampa Bay on Monday Night Football. But I still think Baltimore, Baltimore last night, if I said Buffalo, I apologize. Baltimore last night thrashing Tampa Bay. I believe Baltimore this season, the way they're playing, is now equipped because of the addition of Henry to go on the road in Kansas City and beat the Chiefs.
I think they could, and obviously everything took me on Lamar and can he get it done in the playoffs? Last night they showed the graphic,
Hmm.
all the regular season stats, and then in the playoffs he kind of fits the bit. But yeah, they're looking a lot better in terms of just being a complete team. So, and the receivers are starting to step up with Flowers and Bateman and the rest of those guys. That they are, they're dual action on the offense. They're not just run heavy, and then you add Henry in there, he can
He's
close games out. So, and we talk about the Chiefs. Yes, their strength is their defense, but their offense, the way it's so banged up right now, they're not they
they
lose
got to go
Juju
out and get a wide
Smith-Schuster.
receiver. They got to get a
Yeah,
wide receiver.
they have no playmakers. You're counting on Sky Moore and Nicole Hardman to make plays offensively, and that's just not happening. And Kelsey at his advanced age, he's just not the same player. So the Chiefs are ready to be had, and I know the Bills and the Ravens and their fans are like, you know what, about time we're going to take our bite out of the Chiefs.
And listen, you're allowed to have a down year, right? I mean, you're trying to go back to back to back when you're trying to three-peat. It's very hard to do. Hell, when the 49ers ripped off 88, 89, and then 90, the Giants pinched them. The Giants knocked out Montana in that NFC Championship. They had the fake punt. Reasons takes it 20-something yards. Craig fumbles late. Mac Barr kicks 5 field goals, and they went 15-13. They just caught the 49ers at the right time, and the 49ers caught the Giants at the wrong time. I think that's how it might play out with Kansas City this year. All these injuries, and see, but Baltimore knows this graphic, he's only lost 1 time to NFC. It doesn't matter. You got to get through Kansas City. You got to get through Buffalo in the AFC. But I believe right now, the way their defense is playing, the weapons that you mentioned, Lamar Jackson, the X factor, Henry, the closer, Flowers is a wonderful player when you give him the ball in open space. I don't see how Kansas City can match that. It puts more pressure on Patrick Mahomes to be Houdini and a magician, and that's only going to get you so far because they're void of talent right now. This was the opportunity for Baltimore and or Buffalo to knock them off. It's got to be this year.
It is. Q now, Lamar's 23-1 against the NFC, but that's a great point. You got to do it against the AFC. Everybody knows it's playoffs or bust. And you know the way they're going to beat the Chiefs, whether it's the Bills or the Ravens, it's physicality.
You
And
have
and, and
to.
that's what's happening to the Chiefs right now. His offensive line is leaky. We know the interior line's pretty good, but his two
Yep.
tackles, they're very shaky. And So teams are hitting him. He's getting harassed. He's making mistakes. He's got 6 touchdowns and 7 interceptions. So Mahomes is not playing like the championship quarterback that we know. So this is the Ravens and Bills opportunity, and it's going to be fun to watch. We're close to the halfway mark, and we want to see how these all three of these teams finish.
Yeah, you mentioned Lamar Jackson's lone loss NFC team a couple years ago to the Giants, right? And late in that game, there was a fumble scramble, picked it up, threw across his body, and McKinney of all players, who's having a monster season with Green Bay, returns it deep, and the Giants win it late. You got to get through Buffalo, and you have to get through Kansas City. All right, game ball and Lackey. All right, so I mean, I think it's pretty evident game ball. Now, I didn't see you posted this, and I know what happens because we do BYP on a Tuesday to recap it. If you didn't have Lamar Jackson, you had to give it to Jared Goff.
It's interesting because I gave it to a Lion, but it wasn't Jared Goff. I gave it to Mon-Ra St.
St.
Brown. I mean,
Brown.
I mean, he could take it for the whole team. I saw the celebration in the locker room, and they were all jumping around, and the kicker they're holding him up, but Amon-Ra, I mean, eight targets, 8 catches, 112 yards, one TD. He's a guy that's just a game breaker, and a whole offense is clicking. My son was like, "You should have gave it to Jahmyr Gibbs. You could have gave it to him as well."
Good
I
point.
mean, he goes for over 100. Montgomery goes for 100, and they're just a dangerous team. They win 31-29, now 5-1, 1-0 in the divisions. And we talked about how tough this division is. They're in the driver's seat, so it's going to be fun to watch them get going. So I gave it to Mon St. Brown.
Lackey, did you give it to a team?
Yeah, there were a lot of
I,
particular teams and people. I thought
I,
about the Giants offensive line. I was going to talk about them. They
I know
just
who
were
you gave
so
it to.
leaky.
I think
All
you
right.
gave it to the Patriots.
The Patriots, I thought about them. I thought about the
Mhm.
Cleveland Browns fans. There's so many bad teams. Carolina, you could throw them in there as well. New England was terrible. That game, I woke up early to watch that over in London. What a stinker they put that on over there. And Jacksonville kind of got right. But I gave it to Gardner Minshew for the Raiders. He was 15 and 34 for only 44%, 154 yards, no touchdowns, 3 interceptions. They lose to the Rams 2015, and the Raiders are another team. They're going to have to blow that thing
I
up and,
agree.
and, and start anew, man.
Yeah, I think Antonio Pierce is gone. I think I'm sorry, Brady's idea is to bring Belichick in. And I don't know, Belichick's dating a 20-something-year-old. He's doing a Manning cast and ESPN and McAfee. He's enjoying his best life. God bless him, right? I wanted to ask you about the Patriots because I went on the record this year and I got hammered and I said they have the worst constructed roster. They have one of the worst constructed coaching staffs, and I think they're going to have a horrible 2 to 3 win season, if that. How the hell did they get the win earlier in the season? They beat Cincinnati. Cincinnati's probably thinking to themselves, what the hell? They haven't won since. And then you have Gerard Mayo come out and basically call his players soft. Listen, Belichick never did that. Belichick would speak through the media, but he would also handle it in house. I think Mayo might be one and done in New England.
Could be. He was a coach in waiting, and
Yep.
they're just a team at this rate. Drake May did not play that bad in this game, and you could see he's a young quarterback that could develop, but there's just not a lot else there. The offensive line, it's so leaky. They've had about 6, 7 combinations on the offensive line. Defensively, which is supposed to be Mayo's calling card, other than Christian Gonzalez, there's just nobody on that defense. So, I could see him also being one and done, it not a tear down, but they got to build around their young quarterback, and the cupboard was just not full after Belichick left there. It's a tough situation, but nobody's crying for New England. They won so many
No.
Super Bowls, and
Have a down
eventually
year.
they'll get, yeah, hopefully they'll get it together. But yeah, you're right. They're an ugly team, and they're fighting with Carolina and Cleveland. They're all going to be fighting for that number one overall pick coming up.
All right, as we recap week 7, Lloyd with a couple nice little hits over the weekend, myself as well. Keep an eye out for Jared Goff in that MVP race. Right now, the front runner along with Lamar Jackson. This edition of Back Your Play with Q, powered by our good friends over at Fresh Roast Coffee Plate Again Sports. You can check us out on our YouTube channel, Rich Q on Q, and during the week, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday with The Drive with Q from 4 to 6 on 1029 FM The Game. Catch Lloyd during the week on BYP, The Drive, and of course, host of Lloyd Vance's Insider Football, 8 to 9 every Monday on Sports Radio 1029 FM. The Game, Southwest Florida's newest game in town, part of the Coastal Sports Network. All right, later on the week, we will start to dive into week 8 lines. We'll make our picks and plays and prop bets as well. But as always, appreciate you jumping on this edition of Back Your Play. Thank you, my friend.
All right, Q, talk to you later.